Got to tell you, typically the last few years on Mondays when Rudy comes on our program, it's all about a Cardinal loss. But this year it's been refreshing that we get to talk Sun Devil football for the most part. And we saw what happened with the Cardinals yesterday. We don't need to talk to him about that today. I think it's all Sun Devils this Monday from the Trophy Bar as alumnus Rudy Carpenter joins us here on the Right to It guest line. All right, Rudy, I ask the same question every week, and it has to do with your biggest takeaway. What was your biggest takeaway in this huge win over BYU?
Man, that's a hard question when you talk about biggest takeaway, but I think for me, the biggest takeaway is just finally. And what I mean by that is I don't know how many times where we've watched an ASU game where ASU has finally started to get momentum. They're finally starting to play well. They're finally starting to, make big things happen. And then they play a big game. They play a big game at home. They play a big game at home against a ranked opponent, a highly ranked opponent. And it's like, it feels like we just have never been able to get over the hump. And to me, it feels like that was the biggest takeaway of this last game. It's like, wow, maybe we finally got over that hump and we're able to win a big game and maybe we can ride this momentum, along with, Coach Ward and Marcus Arroyo getting new contracts. Maybe things are moving in the right direction.
And Rudy, that was going to be my point, to see the coordinators be as aggressive as they were. ASU was very resilient on defense. They pretty much withstood the onslaught, got the interception there. A little craziness there at the very end of the game. But to your point, yeah, it was nice to see the Devils closing games out with ranked opponents on national TV.
Yeah, again, I feel like, we just haven't been able to do a ton of that over the last. It feels like every single time we get that opportunity, like I said, to get over the hump or have that hump game, we're just, never able to capitalize on it. And, I feel like that was, again, for me, the big takeaway of this week. I think it's a little unfortunate the way the game ended, because I think it took a little bit of the zest maybe away from the win or away from, how that team really played. But at the end of the day, a win is a win. And in my viewpoint, this is a huge win. You're talking about Kenny Dillingham, who, had a team that was picked to finish last in the Big 12. And if they can take care of business this week against the University of Arizona, they're going to find themselves playing in the Big 12 championship game. Like I said, there's a lot of great coaching performances out there this year with Cignetti at Indiana and Dan Lanning at Oregon. And to me, even Deion Sanders has done a great job considering where that Colorado program has been over the last couple of years. But Kenny, to me, you could make an argument for him to, be in the Coach of the Year mix.
Rudy Carpenter is our guest on the Right Toyota guest line. Rudy, there are about 962 different tiebreakers in the Big 12 as we will close out the season. Look, I just find it very interesting that all of these teams still have life.
Three.
And I don't know, do we play paper, rock, scissors at the end to see who eventually gets in?
Yeah, it kind of feels like, that might be what's going to happen. But maybe I'm crazy that I read it wrong, because the way that I read it was if ASU wins against University of Arizona, they're in the game.
Yes, that is correct.
That's correct.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to me, if that's the case, then, this sets up perfectly for ASU. And if you're the coaching staff at ASU, and the players at ASU, it's really, really hard to control your own destiny. And they're in a situation right now where they control their own destiny. So to me, it should just be, full-fledged, onward looking. Let's beat the University of Arizona and get a chance to go play for all the marbles. And I think that's an interesting setup for this game, obviously against the University of Arizona, because it's a huge rivalry game. And as we know, crazy things can happen in a rivalry game. And the University of Arizona would love nothing more than to ruin the Devils' chance to get in the Big 12 championship game.
What would be your advice for these young players? You played those U of A Wildcats a few times. They've been very successful.
Yeah.
What's your advice for these young guys with everything basically on the line to go to the Big 12 championship game?
I mean, it sounds like terrible advice, and I know when I was a player and I used to hear old heads like me say what I'm about to say, I'd always be like, "Oh man, shut up! This guy doesn't know what he's talking about." Guy played back in 1930s, and he just doesn't know what he's talking about. But I mean, really, at the end of the day, they just have to treat this like another game. And the reason why I say that is because, of course, it's a rivalry game. But what you don't want to do is ride the emotional roller coaster, because when you ride that emotional roller coaster, it's going to, present opportunities, to have penalties that come up, unsportsmanlike penalties and things of that nature that are just going to make it a lot harder for you to win. So if ASU can just really, really focus on the idea that all of their goals and dreams are still ahead of them, and that's much more important, than some spat with some, U of A joker who's not going to a bowl game this year. They got to try to keep that in the front of their mind.
Last one, when it comes to Kenny Dillingham and him soliciting any time he gets a chance to for the NIL, are you in favor of that?
I am, just because I think we have to, be realistic here. I mean, if you're a college, and I mean, I'm right in the mix of this is what I do every day. And if you guys saw my cell phone and you saw the number of college coaches that are blowing up my phone today as we speak, asking me if I know any players or who do I have that's going to enter the transfer portal, and these guys are trying to get a beat, on who may or may not be entering the transfer portal, or coaches hitting me up, hey, this player you work with, we really like, how much money do we got to offer him for him to come to our program? At the end of the day, I mean, we would all, wish and hope that loyalty still matters. But at the end of the day, we're talking about a lot of kids who don't, have a lot of money. They don't come from a lot of resources. The vast majority of these guys aren't going to play in the NFL. And when you put a large check, or what feels like a large check, in front of these guys' face, it's really, really hard for them to turn down. And I don't think you can blame them for not turning it down. And so the way that I feel about it, and I know Kenny feels this way, is, we don't have to even have those conversations if we as a fan base can just raise the money and pay to keep our guys here that we like and that we want to stay here and play.
Rudy, great stuff as always. Have a good Thanksgiving, you and your family, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, guys, take care.
You got it. Rudy Carpenter joining us, brought to you by All City Towing. They're hiring. Go to allcitytowing.com, All City Towing, where your future is on the move. Football at 50 is next, as we'll talk about some NFL and some college